I'm going to assume that you want to get better at pickleball. I mean, after all, you're watching this show, and on this show, as well as being hilarious, we talk about lots of things that can help you to play better pickleball, right? We talk about different ways you can hold the paddle. We can talk about different ways that you can add speed to the ball or remove speed when it's coming toward you. We talk about how you can control where the ball goes to make your opponents run and chase the ball. We talk about how you can isolate a weaker player and how you can avoid isolation when your partner's being picked on, right? We talk about lots of different things to help you play better pickleball. So I am going to assume that playing better pickleball is something you want to do, and I'm going to help you. One of the easiest things to do if you want to be a better pickleball player, at least a better returner of serve, is to stand well behind the baseline when you're returning that serve, when you're getting ready for it. Very often when I watch recreational players play pickleball, even people who play in tournaments at intermediate or even high intermediate level, they often stand so close to the baseline. Now, why is this bad? If you want to hit a good return of serve, if you want to hit the return of serve the way you want to hit the return, it's important that you have time to set up for the ball. Because the more time you have to set up and to prepare, the easier it's going to be to hit the ball exactly the way you want. And it's going to be important to have some space between when the ball bounces on the court and when you're able to hit it. That'll make your timing a little bit easier. Now, when players stand this close to the baseline, they better pray that the serve is either short or medium depth. If it's short or medium depth, they're going to have sufficient distance between the bounce and between the moment of contact, so they'll probably be able to hit it well. But if the serve is hit deep, especially if the serve is hit deep and hit fast, then all of a sudden this returner is going to have more trouble. The timing is going to be more difficult because they have to hit it right after it bounces. And very often, especially if it's hit fast, they're not going to have much time to set up the way that they want. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they're going to hit the return of serve out of play. But if you want to be a great player, you have to be able to put the ball not just in the court where you want. And if you want to send the ball well, you need to receive the ball well. Now, don't just take my word for it. Let's take a look at some of the pros getting ready to return serve and notice where it is that they're standing. As you can see here, the pros consistently stand well behind the baseline. In some cases, they're as far back as they can go before running into the fence. By standing well behind the baseline like this, they're forcing the ball to travel farther before it gets to them. And if that ball has to travel farther, that means they're going to have more time to set up to receive it. Now, at this point, you're probably watching and you're saying, oh, Mark, but what if they hit a short serve? Well, you know what you do if they hit a short serve? You run like an athlete. Look, and here's the thing, joking aside, sure, could the serve be hit short? Yes, of course it could. And when players are standing back this far, when the pros are standing back like this, it's not because they know the serve's going to be deep. There's no way to know what's going to happen on the serve. And by the way, if you're playing against other pros, they're pretty good at being precise with those short or angled serves as well, right? So they're standing back here not because they know the serve is going to be deep, but they're standing back this far because they know that having more time to set up for it is better than having less time. And they're still prepared to move forward in case they need to, in case there is that shorter serve. So don't get me wrong, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're still expecting that they're going to have to chase the ball, but they're putting themselves in a position where if that deep serve comes, if that fast serve comes, they've got a decent chance at getting it and getting it exactly the way they want. So that's my suggestion to you, is that you stand well behind the baseline, a full step, maybe a step and a half, maybe even 2 steps, depending on how big your steps are, okay? One caveat here. Let's assume what I'm asking you to do, standing farther back, let's call that the new plan A, okay? So plan A is going to be your default. That's where you're going to start a match, standing well behind the baseline when returning serve. Well, is there ever a time that you should do a plan B, that you should stand on or just barely behind the baseline? Yes. You should stand closer to the baseline, tighter inside the court, when you have good reason to believe that the serve is going to be short. Not just that it could be short, but that it's likely to be short. And what are those chances? What are those situations where it's likely to be short? Well, there's 2 of them. One of them is that you've noticed that there's a habit of this player. This person always serves short, either because they're not very strong and can barely get the ball past the kitchen, or because you know that they think it's tricky to do so, right? They love hitting that short serve. So if you have good reason to expect that that person is going to be sending that ball just barely past the line, sure, then start to move forward. But there's a second time to expect a short serve, and that is wind. If the server is hitting into a substantial amount of wind, then it makes sense to stand a bit closer to that baseline. It's going to be harder for them to get the ball as deep as they normally would. If, for example, you're playing indoors and you're using plan A, standing well behind the baseline, and all of a sudden, like magic, all of a sudden you're playing outside and there's a lot of wind in that person's face, yeah, you should start to move forward. But unless you have a good reason to believe the serve is going to be short, my suggestion to you is to stand farther back, give yourself more time to set up for the ball, and of course, be ready to go forward if you need to.